All right, we have started the broadcast and we'll hold for a few moments before we begin with our guests until some individuals actually start logging in. Are you all able to, thank you for joining us this morning, guys. Well, good morning, or good afternoon, rather. I am Brien Jones, the Chief Operations Officer and Executive Vice President for the National Association of Certified Valuators and Analysts, NACVA, headquartered in Salt Lake City. It's a gorgeous sunny day here along the Wasatch Front. And thank you for joining us for this YouTube Live event where we will discuss valuation, data, and technology. Efficiencies to improve your practice. Joining us for this discussion are David Fein and David Miles, both with ValuSource, and one of our CVA members and NACVA members, Jeff Harwell. Thanks for joining us, guys.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So NACVA has been partnered with ValuSource and Key Value Data for many years, providing databases and software resources to our profession. David, can you discuss a little bit about the relationship between the organizations and the overall goal for this partnership?
Sure. Well, I was just thinking about it. Parnell and I started a relationship, it was over 15 years ago when we were still with Wiley. You know, he decided and we decided the best thing for the NACVA membership is for ValuSource to develop your software. We had a whole team doing it, and we had, you know, decades of experience. So we started that even before we were independent again. And, you know, since then we've become even stronger partners. So our goal and vision is to provide the NACVA membership with, you know, the best valuation software that's out there, as well as provide a depth of databases for not only loading into our software, but also for people that are using, you know, Excel or using other things to do valuation. And so the way this works is there's really, you know, three different entities here that sort of work together. Obviously, NACVA is, you know, sort of the main certification organization. ValuSource provides the software and data, but Key Value Data is also out there too. And Key Value Data has been around for a long time. Formerly, it was called CEER, the Center for Industry and Economic Research. And the goal with that was to provide bundled databases. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we've substantially, in working with Parnell and NACVA and ValuSource teaming up together to create levels. It used to be just a single level. It was just Key Value Data. Now there's, I think, 4 different levels. And we've expanded the data that's on there. So the real purpose of Key Value Data is to provide bundled databases to NACVA members, ValuSource members. And also the other thing we did too is all that data now downloads into the software. It used to be with Key Value Data that you couldn't download Key Value Data software or data into ValuSource software. Now you can. So those are some of the things that we've done. And the vision is just to keep, you know, creating, and in the course of this conversation, we'll talk about some specific things we've done with both the software and Key Value Data to substantially enhance that. So the vision is just to keep providing the best software and data, and also automation, you know, conversation about automating the valuation practice to make it as efficient, effective, and as profitable as possible.
So Dave, you work with several of the members. You're also a CVA. What are some of the resources or the interactions that you have with the members and other clients that are using the data and software? What are some of the things you experience in working with them?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Brien. You know, I guess where I want to start at is to say the thing that we have as professionals, as experts in this field is that we have a subject company where there's not a direct proxy for, you know, for their pricing. And so we have to go out into the market space on bigger market spaces and try to say what data is there that can represent this subject company. And I think that through the subscriptions that are available now, I think a lot of different what do I want to say? The value proposition of that data is really, really nice. And as far as the software goes, what the software does is it helps us standardize our practice and helps us get a little bit of quality control over our practice so that we can, you know, get things done more efficiently and try to drive that realization rate a little bit higher. And so my interactions with the membership tend to go along those lines. What data do you have that I can use in my particular subject company situation? What does your software do so that I can be faster and more efficient at how I accomplish things?
Mm-hmm. And Jeff, as a practitioner and also a mentor and coach to several of the members who are learning to use the software particularly, what are some of the benefits that you have experienced by various subscription levels to key value data, but also using the software to support your engagements?
Well, I think the real key that on the layout of the software is that it creates more of a process. If the user pays attention to the processes laid out in ValuSource, they will hit all the points that they need to hit, and they'll do them accurately. It's more of a process of way of thinking. There's nothing that is mysterious about the software because the software is Excel based. It's very transparent. It's one great big workbook that's very, very comprehensive, regardless of the product you look at. So the fact is it's got a great user interface, and you can enter the data, and if you pay attention to the assumptions that you're putting it in and you know what you're doing, you follow those assumptions, then you can go from A to Z to create your analysis, make sure your analysis is correct before you create a report. But it behooves the user to use it appropriately. It's like anything else. And that's the thing that I stress when I'm mentoring people is that, hey, you've got to pay attention. This doesn't take the place of thinking, but we've got a great process by which we do it. And it keeps the user focused on the process of valuation from point A to point B, which means that you're going for the data input, you're making your adjustments, you're doing your financial analysis, just like they're taught about any other accredited organization. And then you get into the actual valuation, which you have assumptions, and then you reach a conclusion. So again, I believe that keeps people on track. It makes sure that they've thought of all of the things that they need to know before they get to the report writing.
So it's also great that using the software also prompts the individual users to comply with the standards, the professional standards.
Absolutely.
So there's also that support in that it's prompting not only through the valuation process, but in doing so, it prompts the members to also be cognizant of complying with the professional standards.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
Let me say this. You know, the software obviously is built around the standards and, you know, more specifically the body of knowledge in the valuation world. So we try and include the universe of possibilities. So, you know, like Jeff was saying, it acts as a checklist. And, you know, a real specific example of that in the report writer, we have what we call helper text, which on every section of the report, it will tell you to look at something, make sure you note the reason why you made some kind of an assumption, and it walks you through the thinking process. It's sort of like having, you know, evaluator looking over your shoulder and say, make sure you consider this, both as a point as well as some tips and hints and tricks and things like that. So yeah, it absolutely helps people. And, you know, I think for newer evaluators, you know, there's one set of reasons to use it. If they're not fully proficient and, you know, they're not experts in the subject matter yet, it makes it so that they can follow the checklist. But also people that are experts that have been evaluators for a long time and are very experienced also use it. And the reason is more standardization efficiency. It's not like they don't know the standards or they don't know how to do something specifically, but this makes the process much more effective. And I think, you know, one of the biggest reasons is, and most practitioners, I don't think, really spend enough time thinking about how much time they're spending in Excel and Word, just creating Excel spreadsheets, doing templates, copying and pasting, and all that time and energy takes away from, you know, more, you know, what we call it, you know, deeper thinking about the valuation itself. If you're considering, you know, the company, the risk, the industry, and spending time, you know, using your thinking ability, your analytical ability, and your training to do those kind of things, it creates a better valuation than if you're spending too much time, what I call ditch digging in Excel and Word. And the truth is, you know, if you're doing it yourself, there's some level of that you can't get away from. And we tend to make it more automated so that, you know, the things that are simple and automatic that you don't need to do a lot of thinking about, the program handles by itself. And where you do have to do more thinking, the program gives you the time and ability to make that happen. So we think using the software actually helps both new valuators as well as experienced valuators produce better valuations in less time.
Well, it certainly is very in step with the way the world is moving, using technology, software, apps to make our lives more efficient. Hopefully, individuals who are relying upon their spreadsheets and other Microsoft tools will consider, you know, this is a much more efficient approach to performing those engagements.
Brien, can I tag on here for a real quick moment? I think that it's important that we are talking about the word efficiency and effectiveness here. We're not talking about subrogating our expertise to a black box. You know, this here is very open, very transparent. All the different characteristics of a subject company can be described. It's customizable, and it's not subrogating your expertise. I mean, you still need to go to training. You still need to keep up on your experience requirements and your learning requirements, because the software makes it easier to do valuations, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to have expertise to do the valuation in the first place. And I think you've heard that from all three of us here.
Yeah, very good point. Well, we've got some questions from our audience. Thank you for joining us, those of you who are online. Let's just dive into these questions. All right. I do 4 to 6 valuations a year. What data resources would be helpful to me?
Well, why don't I go ahead and take that one? So we sell Key Value Data, sells subscription packages. And what they do is they take a bunch of different databases, bundle them together for a great price. And that price is usually less than what you would have to pay if you bought the individual databases by themselves. So when we're talking about those smaller number of valuations in a year, I would tend to look at that silver package, and what you're missing out of there would be the cost of capital proxies. So you probably want to buy a Duff & Phelps book on top of that, and then probably go with BizMiner or another type of thing to get your peer group comparisons. As you start to work your way up into that 5 to 7 to 8, I think you need to start looking at the Platinum platform. It's about $1,500, $1,400, somewhere in that range, and add a Duff & Phelps book on it for the cost of capital. You get RMA with that one, and it starts to make sense. Instead of buying individual reports for peer comparisons, RMA, the multi-year, and the benchmarking that you can do inside of that is well worth it when you start getting up into those type. And then as you start to get into that 8 to 12 and higher number, I think you really need to look at the Titanium package, because then you have access to everything that's available from us.
Thank you. I've got another question. I've received a recent promotion from NACVA discussing the Econassist benefits. Can you talk about what they are?
Sure. This is David. Let me take that. Let me just bring up a list of what those are. So I've got the entire list. Econassist is the base level of key value data, and as a member benefit, NACVA provides that for free to every NACVA member. And let me just walk through the products that are in Econassist Plus, or in Econassist. It starts with the archived industry and metro reports. And many people don't realize that Key Value Data has a research department, and we do custom research for people. For example, if you want custom either industry research or metro research on a specific industry or metro area, we can do that for you. It's very specialized and tailored for your exact kind of requirements. And those are around $800, and we archive those. So we have hundreds of those. Now, they're not all recent, but you can look in there and see, you know, what sources a professional research person would use. You can see the format of that research, so it's incredibly valuable. So that's part of the Econassist. There's over 1,000 reports on there. There's business valuation articles. There's 5,000 articles where you can go in and look and see, you know, what articles were about any kind of a subject. You can look for, you know, anything on you know, the Dalbert challenges to discounts, marketability, any subject you can think of, you can get articles. Most of the articles are actually, the content is in the database. Some of them, the articles are on like maybe a Thompson site, but we point you to that site and show you where to get them. We don't have a license to give away all of those, but a vast majority of them you can get for free. We have a fabulous federal and state case law database. Peter Agripides is the one that compiles that for us. And that's really kind of cool. If you are doing any kind of litigation and you're looking at, you know, there's a unique situation. For example, you know, let's say, you know, valuation standards talks about, you know, known as of the date of valuation, known or knowable the date of valuation. There's some case law that says, for example, if there was a sale of the company after that, shortly after that, you can use that. There's some case law that supports that. Now, this is not about evaluator becoming an attorney. It's about evaluator doing some pre-research to help the attorney point themselves in the right direction by giving them some specific cases, some specific context. So it speeds the process up. It also makes it much more cost effective. In other words, if the evaluator can look in the federal and state case law database and get their hands on a couple of cases that make sense, they can write up you know, a small abstract, give it to the attorney. The attorney is obviously writing the legal memorandum that the evaluator would reference. But once again, all of that stuff can be done by evaluator, at least the initial research, by looking at the federal and state case law database. There's over 2,000 cases in there. That by itself is worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So it's a fabulous resource. And Peter does a great job of compiling those, creating summaries, and putting them in the database. Another piece of Econ Assist is the conference presentations. They go back for years and years and years, where all of the NACVA conferences, some of the IBA conferences, all of those presentations are available on there. And I think they're put up there 6 months after the conference, maybe, Brian. I don't remember exactly when. But that's a fabulous resource. If you want to see what Robert Grabowski said in the last conference about, you know, Duff and Phelps or cost of capital, or Chris Mercer said something about QMDM, you can go in there, find it, look at the presentation. It's great. The other one in there is S1 filings. Some people don't even realize how valuable those can be. Those are pre-IPO filings. And what that means is companies have to do an incredible amount of work to do those filings, and they're looking at both opportunities, challenges, threats in industries, specific companies, industry trends. So if you're looking, if you're doing evaluation in a specific industry, you can find some recent S1s in that industry, and sometimes there's a gold mine of information that you can glean about the industry and what's going on, because they've obviously have to put an incredible amount of time and energy and resources into filing those S1s. The last one's the expert witness profiler. The expert witness profiler is also a litigation sort of focused database, and it gives you the ability to put in the name of evaluator, and you can get a bunch of information back on them. That's the first level is free. So, you know, if you're looking to figure out what they said, what kind of cases they were in, or what kind of other information is there, it's a great resource. And there's a second level you can pay for, but the initial level is free and is part of Econ Assist. The other database is a compensation database. It's the full-blown Bureau of Labor Statistics compensation database, which is good for a lot of things. What a lot of evaluators use it for is sort of officer compensation kind of numbers. You can get curves of what, you know, executive officers are in different kind of industries, and it can be helpful. So that's it for Econ Assist.
Yeah, it's a great package of services. As an NACVA member, to access your free Econ Assist subscription, you'll need to log into the member portal at nacva.com. In the upper right-hand corner, enter your username, which is typically your email address, and your password. Will log you into the NACVA member portal. And then along the left-hand side, in a tan-colored navigation bar, about halfway down under resources, member resources, there is a link for Econ Assist. By clicking that link, it will push you then over to the Key Value Data website, where you again need to enter your email address or username, and it will then log you into the Key Value Data portal. There are 3 tabs once you log in, and across those tabs, anything highlighted in green will be the products that is free in the Econ Assist subscription. So if you're a member and haven't logged in to take advantage of those benefits, you certainly should. And thank you for partnering with us on that, David.
Absolutely. And let me just say this. I know NACVA is promoting some of the benefits of Econ Assist, so I would encourage people to keep your eyes open. Once a month, there's a database in Econ Assist that's highlighted. There's going to be a video. There's some detailed descriptions on how that works. And some of these things are just so useful. And I know a lot of evaluators, it's like all of us, you know, we're so busy, we don't have time to explore new things. But some of the things in Econ Assist are just so valuable. I encourage people to log in and check it out.
Right. So one last time, log into nacva.com. On the left-hand side, after you do, in the tan-colored navigation bar, scroll down to Econ Assist, click that link, enter your email, and log in and start taking advantage of those benefits. Okay, we have another question. I perform mostly gift and estate and FLP valuations. What resources would be helpful for me?
Well, without a doubt, for those type of valuations, you're really probably going to be looking at a non-controlling, non-marketable interest. And in that case, you're definitely going to need Plurus, which is an excellent software product that we have through ValuSource that's going to help you determine, you know, specifically based upon a number of characteristics, how your subject company compares to those data and transactions that have been out there in the marketplace that are traded, you know, which may be, you know, derivatives or small amounts of stuff. And that's really key, because some of the real great characteristics are such as, you know, what were the outstanding number of shares that were being traded? What was the volatility that was being traded? You know, the volatility. And if you pull all those characteristics from Plurus, then you can make the argument, you know, I've looked at this and what's in common with my subject company. So Plurus is a great database that we have through ValuSource. Highly recommended. A lot of evaluators that are experienced are really on board with Plurus. So we're very fortunate to have that. That would definitely be one I would think that you would need in an FLP.
Cool. Any other comments, Dave or David? That's good. Okay. We have another question about Pratt Stats, IBA, and BizComps. What are the difference between the three of those, and why? What would you propose or recommend in this case?
You want to take that one, Dave?
Sure, sure. So those three databases go to the market approach. Inside the market approach, we're going to say what transactions occurred that were similar to my subject company had it been sold, or if it were to sell in a hypothetical situation. And so all three of those databases go to those transactions that actually have occurred. IBA was put together back in the 1970s by Ray Miles, no relation. We talked to each other before he passed, and 4 generations back, no relation. But Ray Miles put this together. He was a pioneer in the field, and he said, look, if I start to find out what the sales of transactions are occurring at, I can start to have a better idea of what that marketplace really is. And so he was trying to replace a rule of thumb. Then along comes in the 1990s Jack Sanders, and Jack Sanders says, hey, I'm a business broker, and I need to have some idea of what businesses are transacting at. And so he put together BizComps, and BizComps has like 23 fields inside of it, very well defined. And because it's so well defined, a lot of appraisers like to use that database because it's easy to understand. And so we'll go from there. And then Shannon Pratt came along and said, you know, both of these databases seem to have some problems. Let me try to put mine together. I'm an appraiser. I write all these great books. And so he put together Pratt Stats, and Pratt Stats takes care of these super micro businesses. That's my term. But let's think about businesses that are less than 2 million in revenue or so. And BizComps and IBA really cover those well. And then Pratt Stats covers those as well as he gets up into the higher end companies using some public information in there as well. Now, I will say that Pratt Stats is exclusive to BV Resources. Obviously, Shannon Pratt put it together. BV Resources owns that particular product, and so we don't sell that together, but we do sell the IBA and the BizComps, and they're part of those subscription packages that I was talking about. I would also suggest that Inside of those subscription packages, there's a guideline public company database that will just come out with, very fresh, and we should take a look at those. There's a webinar coming up here this Friday, and we'll be happy to talk about that there. But you can also do a guideline public company search inside of that market approach as well with those subscription packages.
Cool.
I got a little off topic, Brian, sorry.
No, that's good.
And let me just chip in here just for a second. One of the things that a lot of key value data customers do is to cover the same sort of spectrum. And the IBA market database has more transactions than any of the databases. I think the IBA market database has over 37,000. I think Pratt Stats is at about 25,000 these days, and BizComps is at about 12. And we also have done deals too, which is public company filings. In other words, when a public company buys a private company, in their 10K, they have to disclose that information, and a lot of times there's financials in there. So I know Pratt Stats includes some of that data in Pratt Stats. So some people are buying, one or more of our databases to sort of get the same kind of a coverage. In other words, as Dave said, BizComps and IBA are businesses mostly under 2 million. The 8K data, not 10K, the 8K data is mostly businesses way above 2 million. It's like, from 2 to 250 million. But if people buy, like, for example, IBA data and done deals, it's a very similar coverage to Pratt Stats in terms of size of companies. And the done deals database has most of the 8K public company acquisitions of private companies. And then once again, the IBA database has a ton of transactions. The other unique thing about the IBA database is the data goes back 30 years. So it's really interesting to look at trends. And some valuators were concerned that going back that long doesn't make sense. For example, BizComps goes back 10 years. I'm not sure how far Pratt Stats goes back, but the default searching in our IBA database is 10 years. You can uncheck the box and go back and see back 30 years. So it's interesting for people that want to go back there. Ray Miles always said, unless there's a very significant correction going on in the market, like the 2008 crash, the multiples remain very constant over time, which is interesting and comforting to see. The other thing I would say too is our, IBA market data has the DMDM method in it, the direct market data method that Ray Miles and the IBA sort of pioneered, which we don't have time to go into the details of that, but it's very interesting, and we have an analyzer that lets you walk through the entire process of that. So anyway, there's a lot of comparable data that we have. There's 3 different databases, actually 4 for company comparisons. There's IBA market data, there's BizComps, there's done deals, and as Dave mentioned, our new guideline company, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that because that's got some really cool stuff in it.
Well, while we're on that topic, why don't you give us some updates on it?
Dave, I'll let you take that one.
So what we've done is we've I want to say partnered up with Tagnify data. Tagnify goes out to public company information off of the SEC, pulls in that information, and automatically produces financial statements. And it's very transparent, and they have a real good way of saying, here's what information was there. The thing about the Tagnify data that's really, really interesting is that it puts it together in a standardized format so that you can actually say, look, here's comparability on an industry, and here's comparability between companies, which is really where we're trying to get to as valuation pros. As I said before, we have a subject company that doesn't have a direct proxy, and we're trying to find that proxy, or at least make a leap to one of those. And so having that comparability is really nice. The data is easy to search, which is not so easy in other databases. And that is you can put in industry codes and keywords and come up with potential public companies that might look like your subject company. And so between those different pieces, I should also say there's pricing data available now too. So you can put in a valuation date and get the price, here's the opening price, close price, average price for that particular valuation date, and that would actually go against the shares of common stock that are outstanding at that point in time. So you can actually start to calculate MVIC values, and we have an analyzer tool that will get you to that MVIC place. So you can get to the invested capital place where most guideline public company methods want you to be at. So that information is in there too, which has never been in there before. That's why it's so powerful.
Thanks for touching
and
on
I
that.
believe that comes, I believe that comes with every level of subscription that you have. So
okay.
Yeah, it comes from silver and above. Let me just add a couple of other things too. It was great working with Tagnify to incorporate their data. We've had another guideline company data source for years and years and years. And we thought this one was much better. One of the things that you get with it, which is really kind of great. Dave mentioned that the searching is easy. We've added the ability to do as many searches as you want, and then you just kind of capture the companies in that search, and it sort of saves them. So you can, you know, do a dozen searches and find the companies that make sense. But what I think is really great about this is it allows you to download income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, and ratios for all the companies that you download, but it also lets you do trailing 12 months, annual, quarterly, and monthly. So it's just an amazing amount of data. You need to sort of sometimes, if you have 20 companies and you're downloading all of that, it might take a minute or two. But imagine if you've got 20 companies and you'll get a spreadsheet with all of that data in it that you can look to analyze. And there's also a multiple spreadsheet that downloads, like Dave said. When you put in the valuation date, it actually calculates the MVIC multiples for those companies as of the valuation date, lets you put in the information for your subject company, so you can actually get a comparison between, you know, your subject company and these public companies. Because I think, you know, there's two stages to this. You know, standards say you have to do a guideline public company look. And, you know, the first thing is, are there any public companies? So this gives you a very quick way to go in there and say, is there any? And if there are, it lets you take that next step and actually calculate all the multiples, compare it to your subject company, and carry it all the way through. So we're really excited about it. The early feedback we've gotten on this thing is just tremendous. It is a ton of data. It's very easy to use, and it's very easy to export an incredible amount of data very quickly. I actually think you can get more data faster out of this app than any other guideline app out there.
Wow. Good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Let me make a couple of comments about all this data overload.
Okay. Is there a valuation?
One of the really great things about the ValuSource databases, because we always talk about data, and I really believe some people really get into a data overload. But what's really great about the databases, particularly when you go through our web apps or through key value data, that each of the databases can be downloaded and exported. And there's an analyzer in each one of those. Now, while we're dealing with data, the beautiful thing is if we've got graphs that you can visually see the data, and that can't be overemphasized, because that kind of gives you an idea where there's outliers. And when you look at your subject company, it makes a lot of things more certainly more clear than just looking at data, raw data on a spreadsheet or an export. So you can really see how the data is aggregated. So that same analyzer has the ability for you to put information in from your subject company to see where it is. So a lot of people forget about that. They're so busy just downloading data and just putting it in there, but they haven't really taken the time to really analyze that data and correlate it with their subject company, and then to see it visually. And I can't express how important that is to see in a client, to see visually how that data is correlated when you're talking and using the market approach. And also, even with our software, those charts and those visual graphs can be linked into our report for the report writer. And I personally use those. I use very few visuals in my reports, but those visuals that are taken from the downloads from our databases quite frequently show up in my reports, because that is one very powerful visual part that speaks well to the client, that understands what I'm talking about when I'm using the market approach. So aside from just looking at raw numbers, I just want to make that comment that that's available in our databases.
And let me just say this too. I think one of the things that ValuSource really prides ourselves in is not just delivering data, but giving you tools and platforms that make it manageable. Like Jeff said, data can get a little overwhelming. There's so much of it. So how do you, even something like comparables, for example, you look at a database like IBA market data, there's 37,000 comparables. If you drill down to even restaurants and pizza restaurants, there's a ton of data there. So how do you get your arms around it and really get a sense of what data is comparable, what's not? It's a challenging thing. So all of our focus is making it easy to find, easy to analyze, and giving the valuator a sense of the data. Because if you have a good feel for the data, it's much easier to apply. It's much easier to make the assumptions. It's much easier to defend all that stuff. So I think it's one of the differences with our platforms is we really focus on making it understandable and easy. And as an example, I'll use the Duff & Phelps cost of capital calculator. When Duff & Phelps originally created that, And keep in mind, Duff and Phelps is a pretty high-end firm. Their focus is pretty high-end. Most of the valuators that they're dealing with and thinking about are the higher end valuators. But a lot of valuators, like that question you got, Brien, was from somebody that's doing 4 to 6 a year. They may want to use Duff and Phelps. And so the question is, how do you do that? The original Duff and Phelps analyzer produced something like over 20 pages of tables, table after table after table, chart after chart after chart. It's a little challenging. If you're an expert and you're really familiar with the data, it's relatively simple to know what to do. So we looked at it and said, what is the average valuator, who maybe is not an expert or wants to make this process more effective? How do they deal with that? So we spent a bunch of time, I can remember probably dozens of conversations with Duff and Phelps and Dave Miles, looking at it and saying, well, what does the valuator need? And what we came up with was a process where, we asked the valuator, what are you trying to get out of this? Because most valuators, most of the time, are really doing a relatively simple buildup or a CAPM. They're not doing some of the other sophisticated stuff they do. So in our analyzer, if you tell us that's what you're looking for, it says, well, this is the only information you need to input, and this is the output that you need. So it just totally streamlines that entire process, making it much easier for the evaluator. Once again, for the new person, it helps walk them through it, shows them exactly what they need, how to apply it. For the expert, it helps streamline, and it makes it more efficient. But that's the kind of thinking that ValuSource tries to do with all of our data. And Dave Miles, is sort of one of the key people behind that. And Jeff, we didn't say that, but Jeff is part of our tech support team. He's actually part of the ValuSource team. So he's one of the people that gives us feedback and helps us make all those things accessible, easier for not only the average valuator, but valuators that are experts that want to make it more effective.
In fact, that's a great segue. We did receive a question: what kind of training is available if I opt to purchase the software?
Well, we have about 3 different ways to handle the training. And training occurs in 2 or 3 ways. The question is specifically asking at the beginning. But what I find is that people tend to do valuations at a certain time of the year, and it just depends on their firm and when they want to do those. But they'll do 3 or 4 valuations in a certain 2 or 3 month period, and then the rest of the year they don't. And so it's hard to come back to the software after 8 months and say, exactly how do I do this again? And so there's 2 pieces of training, one for experience and one for new. But the first thing that we have is we have a YouTube video where we go through the software and we go through the basics, and it's, it takes about an hour to go through, but it's on YouTube, so you can zip up on that as you remember things or as it makes sense. The other thing we have, is the a live training. So one of our people can get on the phone with you and spend an hour and go through the same types of things if you're more comfortable dealing with the person and being able to ask questions. And then lastly, we have tech support. And so usually training starts to go down into, I'm trying to do this one specific thing. How do I get this accomplished? And so we have tech support. You can call in and you get calls back from people like Jeff or me, and we say, oh, you're trying to do a weighted average cost of capital. You're trying to iterate it, and this taskbar button has that potential to do that. Is that really where you want to end up at? And they say yes, and everything works out great. So for specific cases, there's that. For live training, you call up and get that. And then we have the YouTube video that probably is always available.
Cool. Very convenient.
And let me just say this too, for those of you that are looking to get your CVA or in the NACVA training or have not done your case study yet, we have a great partnership program with NACVA where you get to use the software and the data, and we actually have the case study financials in a sample file. And then Jeff is one of our software coaches that helps you walk through it. In other words, we have a way to rapidly get you up to speed on the software so you can quickly do your case study. And we've had a bunch of people do that in the last 18 months. And the response has been great because, with a little bit of work doing the software, once again, it's like a checklist. So, people just getting their CVA or working on their CVA or just doing the case study, they're not experts yet. So the software helps lay the whole thing out from beginning to end. And we provide all the support to make that happen.
Cool. Okay, I've got a question. I'm considering valuation software, have looked into SageWorks and MoneySoft. How do they compare to BVM Pro and the Report Writer?
Do you want to take it, David, or do you want me to give it a stab?
Why don't you give it a stab and then I'll jump in.
Okay. We don't we don't own Moneysoft and we don't own SageWorks. So somebody's going to have to do their own homework and find out what their strong points are and what their weak points are. What I can say about our software is that we have tried to make this very transparent. One of the problems that I tried to bring up at the beginning is that you can't subrogate your expertise to a black box. And I don't think either of those two companies do that, but I want to make sure that you're well aware that we take Microsoft Office and we put code over the top of Office to try to make it more efficient. And that's really what we're after here, is trying to say, can you get through a process faster? And so it's very transparent, very open. There is a learning curve to the software. You have to take your time to get into it. But once you figure that out, it's very easy to do work. In fact, I give demonstrations all the time and say, if I have no thinking process whatsoever and I just put in information and put in inputs, I can get through a single period income model in about 10 or 12 minutes. And it's pretty amazing how fast that can go. And that's the kind of thing that our software can do. The report writer has two levels. One, if you're don't have any reports that you're wanting to mimic, we have a template inside of there, standards-based, goes through the checklist, has the important bullet points that you need to cover. Here's the information about the company. Here's the adjustments that I made. Here's the normalizing things that I made. Here's the methods that I chose. Here's the methods that I didn't choose. And as you work your way through those different headings, you'll come up with a report that is mostly standards compliant. And when I say mostly, if you look at the standards, there's some of them that you can't generically do. You have to say, here's the specific company and the standards are applying to that specific company, and I have to make the information agree to that. So that's the part that we're missing on that part there. But the report writer will link back into the analysis. It will bring forward information. Fields, say a discount rate or say a capitalization rate. It'll bring in total values, a conclusion of value, say. And as numbers change, you can update those very quickly inside of the report. And that's where the real benefit comes at. For the other side of it, and saying you do have reports that you've written in the past and you want to mimic these reports, it's very easy to create a template from it. And what that means is that you put your boilerplate, your generic language inside of a template, so that when you want to create a new report, you have new data, a new subject company in the analysis, and it will automatically transfer over to that report that you have, and it will look like yours. It'll be your firm's signature, it'll be your firm's presence, your firm's professional view that you want to put out there into the world as a report. It just makes it faster and easier to use.
Let me add just a couple of things there. I think, one of the things that people ask, one of the big differences between SageWorks and ValuSource is SageWorks is a web-based product and ours is not. And one of the reasons that we've hesitated going to the web, although we certainly could, is that, Dave was saying transparency and flexibility. With our software, it's an Excel model, and we really feel strongly that valuators need to be able to do two things. One, understand what's going on, understand the math behind it. They can just open an Excel file and see the formulas. They can also call ValuSource and get answers. But the other thing is, valuation is not like accounting where there's GAAP that prescribes exactly the way things should go. Valuation is part sort of science and accounting, and part of it is an art. It's it's subjective. It's appraiser opinion. It's why appraisers are hired. It's not just a calculator. So with something like a web-based product, it's not customizable and it's not transparent. So if you want to do something like add lines, add rows, do your own custom analysis, those things become hard to impossible in any web-based product. So I think that's one huge differentiator. In other words, I feel that professional evaluators absolutely need that transparency and customizability. So that's an important piece. The other thing I'll say too is,
before you go on, I think that's a great response to those individuals who are involved, perhaps where the valuation is involved in litigation, because it is so transparent and customizable. That's a really key reason, particularly when defending those reports in litigation.
Absolutely. And ValuSource has been on both sides of that fence. I mean, we've had products over the years. We started out as a Lotus 1A spreadsheet, 32 years ago or whatever it was. And at one point, we had a standalone application. And what we found and what we sort of decided, it was sort of a bet the company strategy that valuators, love and use Microsoft Excel and Word, and they need that flexibility. And let me just say about report writers too, because both SageWorks and MoneySoft have report writers. Many people don't know this, but MoneySoft got its start by buying our M&A software from us, I don't know, 25 years ago. So I know those guys well, and I know their software well because we originally wrote it all. But one of the differences in the report writers, which I think is really significant, is for both MoneySoft's report writer and SageWorks also has a report writer. Theirs is a one-pass report writer, which means, when you're done with the analysis, you select create a report and a report is created for you. But what happens when the numbers change? And, in our experience, and I think in evaluators' experiences, those changes come all the time, whether it's an adjustment in the financial statements or someone's making an adjustment in one of the methods or somewhere else. Many numbers, all the numbers in evaluation can change. So what do you do? Well, in SageWorks and MoneySoft, you push the button and generate a new report. But what does that mean about your customizations? In other words, valuation is an iterative process, and you're working through with clients, you're working through with attorneys, and many times and Jeff, I'll let you comment on that. Many times there's an iterative process. With our report writer, it's the only one that allows you to update all the data in that report and maintain your customizations. In other words, you can go into that Word document, make all the changes you want, and when one of those changes in the numbers happen, it automatically updates. That's proprietary technology that we've been developing over the last 20 years. And to me, it's one of the highlights and one of the differentiators of why someone would think about using our products and especially our report writer, because that hot link two-pass report writer is key, because if you make changes in those other report writers and then the numbers change, you basically have to either manually make all those changes again or throw it away and start from scratch. And once again, our goal is to make the whole process super efficient. And that was a really hard piece of technology. And as far as I know, we're the only company on the planet that actually has that.
Wow, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll be happy to make a comment on that. From a user standpoint, first, the overarching comment that I'd make is when we're talking about software, we're actually talking about two pieces of software on the ValuSource side. One of them is Microsoft Excel, and one of them is Microsoft Word. Every evaluator is going to be using, unless they're using something that's maybe that's a web-based product, but anybody that has their own valuation and they're talking about, well, I've got my own templates together, they're talking about an Excel product, and then they're talking about Microsoft Word to create the report for the client. It's no different than the ValuSource. The only difference is that key thing that we just talked about is being to update because the client's made a different decision, or you need to update with a different assumption. Ours updates. The technical deal is Visual Basic. If someone wants to really research linking an Excel spreadsheet to a Microsoft Word document, you'll find out there's either 2 or 3 different ways to do that. And some of the ways will automatically break the link if you move anything around. Ours doesn't do that. So you've automatically got a good way to update if anything changes or methodology. And that's really, really key in the report writing aspect, because that happens all the time. Something's going to change. Could be just something as little as one little number in the cost of capital, but with a click of a button, everything is updated in the report. So think about this. When I'm mentoring people and I'm talking with people, particularly the CPAs of the world, I say, okay, well, you want to use your own template, your Excel template, and you want to do a report. Well, I said, well, that way, if you want to talk about productivity efficiency, then you'll get another designation. It's CPA, cut, paste, and assemble, because you're going to have to remember to go to the Excel file. You're going to have to copy that, and you're going to have to paste that into your Microsoft Word. Then you better know Microsoft Word enough that when you paste it in there, you're using an enhanced meta file because the size is not going to change. Can you remember all that? Or are you going to make the change in the Excel spreadsheet and forget to make the correction in your report? That's not a good thing. So, we've kind of got a fail-safe going there. So those arguments, while I appreciate them, you can't just put it together and say, hey, when we're using ValuSource software, we've got this box or something. No, we've got 2 suites of products that everybody's using, and we've got them effectively linked together. And if that's not enough, you can actually link outside spreadsheets. Sometimes I have my own models that I want to put into the program. I'm able to do that. and then it goes right into the report also, which is automatically updated. So if I've got another Excel spreadsheet for another model that needs to be put into the program, it's automatically updated when I do an update. Can't ask for much more than that.
Wow, that's a pretty stellar referral there, Jeff, particularly from someone who's as a user of it. Does sound like
yeah, but the caveat is you have to be willing to invest the time to understand Excel. You have to invest the time to really understand Microsoft Word. And there is a big difference between what the users we have in the valuation industry, what they think their level of understanding Microsoft Word is, and which it, in actuality, what it really is. There are a lot of them really good experts in Excel, and they can create all kinds of models. But when it comes to writing a report and linking with Microsoft Word, they really are only scratching the surface on using that report writer. I talk with many of them, and they don't even know how to create a table of contents. And that could take them hours. And then they'll say, well, how do I create a table of contents? And they got to do a report.
Wow. Very efficient product, but also bringing in the data and the analysis all together. Very good discussion.
Let me mention a couple of things before we move on, Brien.
Okay.
A couple things. One, there's Daryl Durrell, who's been a long-time user of ours, wrote an article for Litigation Services, the Jim Hitchner magazine, and it's called Build or Buy, and it's called Is It Time for You to Take the Step? And it's interesting, you know, whether you're thinking about using our software or not, he talks about 4 or 5 really important things in thinking about whether you're going to use, you know, software like ValuSources, and if you're not, how do you address these other kind of issues? So there's an article on our website. If you look at the ValuSource Pro page at the bottom, that article is there. You can take a look. And the other thing I would encourage people to think about too is, you know, obviously Dave, Jeff, and I are very biased. We work for ValuSource. We, you know, love these products. We helped develop them for years. But I'd encourage people to, you know, think about what their peers have said. Both the 2016 and 2017 CPA Practice Advisor Valuation Best Software was ValuSource over 2016 and 17. So, you know, I think that's a good thing to take a look at.
Yeah, and congratulations on that. As we're rounding into an hour, we've got another question here about core value software. What is it, and how can it leverage my valuation experience?
Sure, I'll take that one. Parnell and I decided to partner with Core Value for a number of reasons. One, we thought it was an excellent way to help valuators extend their experience and their expertise into other areas. And what Core Value is, although it does come up with a value, the value is not a formal valuation. It's really a calculation report, and we're working on specific language to sort of define that, and that's coming soon. But what it really does is help analyze from a qualitative perspective the organizational strength of a company. And although there's a value associated with it, and it's a sort of a hybrid market method on the back end, which I don't want to go into, it does 2 things. One, it does an assessment of a company from 18 different value drivers, but it's really designed to help someone work with a company to improve those drivers. And what they've done is, the method was sort of born at MIT, and Chuck Richards was a consultant for years and years and years in the field of helping companies improve value and improve strength. And he's come up with a process, and it's, you know, there's a body of knowledge in there. And his whole thing was, you know, if you want to understand GAAP, if you understand accounting, you can look at GAAP, and there's a very concrete explanation for everything. But when you're talking about what drives value in a company, there's, you know, a whole myriad of theories, of people, of professionals. And what he wanted to do is sort of create the gap of valuation. In other words, what things in a company make a company more valuable? When you look at data, it's pretty obvious. If you look at, you know, restaurants in Colorado, for example, and you look at companies with, let's say, the same revenue and the same cash flow, they're selling at very wildly different things. There's a big range there. So what is it outside of cash flow and revenue that is driving the value of a company? And that's what Core Value answers. And for a evaluator, you know, so much of your expertise, so much of your training can transfer over to this idea of how do we help companies, instead of just helping them understand what the value is, helping them understand what's driving that value through the 18 different value drivers. But most importantly, how do you help them close the gap, move the needle on some of those things that they're weak in. So core value covers that entire spectrum. There's a discover report, which is really quick. It's 10 minutes. And once again, it's mostly qualitative. It's not like you're putting in 3 years of financial statements. I think you put in a couple of hard numbers like revenue and EBITDA, and the rest of it's qualitative. And it shows you how your company compares operationally to the best running peers. And it also gives you the chance to take the next step with your clients, where you could do it's an hour and a half deep dive assessment on those same 18 drivers. And what's really cool about that is it gives you a roadmap to improve those things. And it also quantifies it. In other words, it's showing you that because of your operational weaknesses and holes and challenges, your value is really maybe, 70 or 80% of what it could be. And it shows you what to focus on first. So you can actually use it as a tool to help you work with clients to help improve their businesses. So it's being used by hundreds of consultants now. It's a perfect tool for CVAs and CPAs to help assess companies that they're working with. And if you want to get into the consulting business or improve or grow your consulting business, it helps you do that. And there's a complete marketing plan for even the most marketing challenged firms out there to help you very quickly and easily. We provide an amazing array of marketing and sales tools that make it easy for you to sell that kind of service into your existing tax, audit, or consulting market. So it's a great thing. If you haven't seen it, we encourage you to take a look at one of our webinars. Maybe even call us for a trial, but it's an exciting opportunity. And I know there's a number of CVAs that have been using it incredibly successfully. Ed Wonke is one who's been doing dozens and dozens of engagements, and he loves it. It's a fun, interesting, intriguing, and there's really nothing more valuable you can do for a business owner than help them understand the weaknesses of their company and help them fix it. And what a lot of people don't understand on the business side is, a strong company is a valuable company, and it's because so many business owners think, exit plans, when am I exiting? It's so far down the road, I don't need to worry about it. But all those things that keep business owners awake at night, everything from revenue challenges to HR challenges, are really operational holes that you can fix. So it really becomes, if you can get that message across to a business owner, it's much more than just this exit plan value thing. It's about your peace of mind, it's about your quality of life, it's about the strength of your business, and all those things come together. So it's an exciting opportunity to work with core value, and I've been excited to work with many NACVA members and CVAs in the core value world.
Great. We've got time for one more question. It's relating to personal injury and wrongful death. Are there any resources available for those types of engagements?
I think this one's yours, Jeff.
This one's mine? Well, great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Now, ValuSource has a great product, which is Damage Advocate. Learn more about it, you'll have to kind of listen to one of my webinars. But basically, it's a suite, and it is a web-based suite, which includes 3 modules. Personal injury, which is the big one, most frequently used. The second is wrongful death, and the third one is employment law. I think in a short period of time, basically to explain this, they all have a unique and a similar process flow. You're putting information in, again, like all the ValuSource products. It's very transparent. It's Excel based with a layer put in that you put the information in that you have regarding the individual that you're dealing with. I'll just call that the subject individual. At the very end, once you put all the information in and all the assumptions and the data that you do, you'll be able to create a report. You can also export the Excel sheet so you know exactly what data you used. Now, again, like Dave Miles has said on the valuation software, it doesn't supplant the fact that you need to know certain things about the economy and the way you do a wrongful death valuation, if you will. You're going to have to know the tables. You're going to have to know certain things. But included in the suites are the tables, such as departmental labor, the census tables that are commonly used in these kind of economic damages cases. The product is used by attorneys. It's used by accountants, forensic financial analysts, forensic economists. It's been around some 20 years, and ValuSource has simplified the process. It's the same product it has been, and it's been tested, throughout the years by a lot of valuators. It sure beats the heck out of the dark ages when I had to go to the library to a depository and Xerox copy all the tables from the Department of Labor and the Department of Census and mortality tables, and put them in a SuperCalc spreadsheet, and then create a report for the client and for the court, you know, on my own and on the fly. Again, it's a great suite. It's worth doing, and it's a way to expand your practice. I guess maybe I've done that pretty much within a couple of minutes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have talked about a lot of resources available through NACVA's partnership with ValuSource and Key Value Data. Thank you, David Fein, David Miles, and Jeff Harwell for joining us. For those of you who have further questions, you can feel free to contact directly NACVA offices or ValuSource Key Value Data through the website or by direct email. We certainly will respond quickly, but are happy to discuss with you your specific needs for data or technology to help you in your practice. We thank you for joining us. We will be online next month with a YouTube Live event focusing on building your reputation and brand through publishing through NACVA journals and blogs. The following month in November, we will be joined by 3 individuals who have expertise in helping analysts such as yourselves grow and build your practice. The topic will be growing and building some strategies in 2018 to expand and grow your practice. So we hope you will join us on a future YouTube Live event. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today, and we hope to see all of you the next time. Thanks again.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dave. Jeff.
Bye.